Welcome back to Equal Time. Our focus, legalizing marijuana in California. For our discussion, we're joined by Bruce Merkin. He's the communications director for the Marijuana Policy Project, America's largest marijuana policy reform organization. Bill Armeline is a professor of justice studies at San Jose State University and is a multidisciplinary scholar activist. He argues for putting a stop to locking up people and ending the war on drugs. Dr. Richard Webb from the San Jose State Department of Communications has written a book called Dying to Get High, Marijuana as Medicine. He's also researching protest rhetoric. Dr. Joanna Belseppi is a family practitioner in San Jose. She is here to share her personal views against marijuana use. Now, out of full disclosure, I have to let you know that Dr. Seppi I have known her for 5 years now as a family physician. Ron Kirkish has lived in Gilroy for 25 years and works as the engineer in the semiconductor industry. He's been waging a battle against a marijuana dispensary opening in Gilroy. And Bob Cook is the special agent in charge of the Bureau of Narcotic Enforcement in the San Jose Regional Office. He has spent 31 years as a California law enforcement officer. I want to thank all of our guests for being here today. We've been talking about this since I've been on the planet, certainly you too. What do you think? Should the state consider legalizing it to raise money, or are there really risks we have to be careful of?
Absolutely not. We couldn't afford to pay the damage it's going to cost us. Right now, substance abuse consumes almost 20% of the California budget. For the damage that alcohol and tobacco has done to the populace, we spend $19.9 billion on this addiction, to the tune of about $545 per person. Every person in this room is paying that out. If we were to tax marijuana, as the people over here are suggesting maybe that we do, we wouldn't be able to raise enough money. They talked about, and your film here talked about raising $1.4 billion in tax revenue. That's roughly $38 per person. We already know that the damage caused and the social damage done by children using drugs, having it more readily available to them. They're out of school, they're in trouble after school. There's more kids in substance abuse treatment now. 65% of all kids in substance abuse training, or substance abuse clinics are there for marijuana, more than alcohol.
Now Bruce is getting antsy over here because during the piece he was taking some umbrage to that.
Well, indeed, you know, what we're seeing is that people who want to maintain prohibition immediately go to the harm caused by the legal drugs, tobacco and alcohol. The science tells us very clearly that marijuana is nothing like those things. It's not nearly as toxic, not nearly as addictive, and unlike alcohol, it's not a cause of violence and aggression, which is the cause of those social costs you were just talking about. The fact is, prohibition gives us the worst of all possible worlds, a drug that's widely available, used by millions of Californians. It is the #1 cash crop in the state, but sold and produced entirely by unregulated criminals. If you think marijuana is bad, and that's your absolute right to do so, why do you want to keep it unregulated? That makes no sense.
On the medical part, I see this every day at the clinic. People come into my office asking me, Dr. Seppi, are you going to prescribe me? Are you a prescriber of marijuana? Can you prescribe me for my chronic pain? I've tried everything. There's nothing more that will work for me. And usually, my first impulse is to, okay, what's causing you to have this pain? What have you tried? Let me try this first. And then if they definitely wants to go to marijuana, I always refer to somebody who actually will prescribe it. For me, the availability of medical marijuana is already there. There are practitioners who believe that it's working for them. For us, for legalizing it, I think, for us who believes that it's, in a way, there are other options that can be tried before going to marijuana. For one, marijuana actually, it's not as safe as people think it is. Smoking marijuana actually affects the breathing tubes 8 times more than a cigarette. It goes through the blood-brain barrier. It actually is very lipophilic, meaning it attaches very well to fatty tissue. The brain is 80% fat. So that's why it really affects, one of the things that always been said before, younger children, what it does is it has the amotivational syndrome. People I agree. It doesn't have the violence. People are actually calm because of it, and that's why it's addictive, because it feels good to use it.
Let me jump in there and say, Dr. Webb, I'm hearing a very strong medical argument, but I'm also hearing a very strong law enforcement argument. Is this a rhetoric issue, or how do we decide this?
I think it's actually an excellent question, and one of the things that I think is interesting is that so many law enforcement officials at this point have no objection to the use of medical marijuana, that really I think what we're talking about here is legalization for non-medical uses more than anything else. Should we legalize cannabis for Californians that are using it for purely recreational purposes? And since many Californians are using it for recreational purposes at this point, I think the compelling argument is we're not going to make that go away. We're in a better position, I think, at this point to regulate it. I think, as Tom Amiano said on the video screen, some of that money could be used for better education, better treatment programs, things along those kind of lines. And it's not just simply a matter of the tax revenue that's generated from the sale of cannabis. There's also an immense amount of money that's bound to be saved in terms of prison reform, in terms of law enforcement costs that are taking place at this point. I think by and large we are dealing with a substance that's fundamentally safe. There's no reason that adult Californians shouldn't have the legal right to choose to use it. And if the state is wise in the way they regulate it, I think we can minimize problems across the board at every
Ron, you look
level.
like you want to jump in there.
I do. The statement was made that we're in a losing battle, and we're not in a losing battle. Recently, we've seen the city of Los Angeles, it's going to close down its dispensaries, over 800 of them, and it's in the legal process of doing that right now. Already, over 200 cities in California have bans or moratoriums on it and leading to bans, and more are coming. Over 9 counties are banning it. So and also statements from the leadership of NORML and MedLeaf have recently come out and said, we are concerned. We don't like the trend. It's not going the way we expected it to. So I take issue with somebody that says we're on a losing battle. We are in a winning battle, and we're going to win this battle.
Bill, what do you think of that?
On these battle cries, this is the same battle cry we've heard since, well, actually the 1930s when this all began. The story's been the same basically for the history of the drug war. We're going to win, we're winning, don't worry, we're going to win next time, we're going to win with a new measure, we're going to win with these new laws. And so let me apply some history. The National Commission on Marijuana and Drug Use actually was the largest commission ever created to study both the medical effects and the criminal justice roles, if there were to be any, for the use of marijuana in the United States. That was commissioned by Nixon during his big trump up for his war on crime. Now, of course, Nixon got answers he didn't want, and those answers were as follows. This commission was called the Schaefer Commission, and they made 3 recommendations. First, complete decriminalization. And let me quote that. The actual, and this is a quote from the report, the actual and potential harm of the use of the drug, marijuana, is not great enough to justify intrusion by the criminal law into private behavior, a step which our society takes with great reluctance. They also suggested that the pursuit of marijuana prohibition was constitutionally suspect. It wasn't even constitutional. And then thirdly, they said it absolutely under no circumstances should be considered Schedule 1.
But I'm hearing, and maybe Dr. Seppi can help me with this, I'm hearing the medical aspect of it being minimized in that statement. It's not taking into account what doctors, medical researchers are saying in comparison to tobacco and marijuana. Dr. Seppi, would you want to say something?
Because I think it could also be like a gateway drug. What do you think about it, it being a gateway drug? If we're going to legalize marijuana for its property for pain control, why not just also legalize cocaine and heroin? It does the same thing. It does also for pain control. It helps people.
That was a question that was covered by the commission as well, and they found absolutely no relevance to it. And in fact, over and over and over again, in the research community, I have to be very honest, in the research community, the gateway drug issue hasn't been a question for 40 years. It's not even a relevant question.
That's really important.
I take issue with that.
I'm sorry, every independent commission, every independent scientific body that has ever looked at the gateway theory has debunked it, including the Institute of Medicine in a report commissioned by the White House. It's simply a phony argument, and I'm amazed that it's still being dragged out.
That statement is totally inaccurate. Studies have shown that not every person that smokes marijuana goes to higher drugs, but the statistics show that 95% or more of the people who do higher drugs have started with marijuana.
They
That's
also
the
started
truth.
with caffeine. Should we ban coffee as a gateway drug?
Just marijuana.
It's basic science.
I have a good response to
Correlation
that
is
one.
not causation. You know that, I'm sure, doctor.
So we've already got 2 bad drugs available, right? Alcohol,
we have
3
many
including
more.
coke.
Many more.
Right.
Bruce.
So we should add
Marijuana's
another
the
one.
largest cash
We should
crop
add,
in
Hold on, Bruce.
California.
we should
Let
add
him
another
talk.
bad choice for kids to make.
But this
Look
is
at just look at Santa Cruz. What's happening over there right now? Just recently, 2 years ago, they voted in Measure K, make marijuana the lowest police priority. So what's happening now? They got problems with their kids. Too many kids are using drugs, marijuana, and alcohol.
Well, they've got kids
Both.
who are now willing to admit it, kids that had been using marijuana all along, but who were unwilling to come clean about
That
it.
didn't come out
Now
in that
that it's a low enforcement priority, it's safer to admit that you do it. Use,
Well, no
use
one
among
gets
kids
arrested
is still
for
very,
saying I
very
used
low.
it. It's not illegal to say I used it. No one gets
true.
arrested for that.
Well, and I think the other piece that we really have to touch on in all this, because, and this is something that's very important for me in my studies, et cetera, looking at prisons, is that, well, what are the proposed solutions? I mean, the proposed solutions is to continue doing what we're doing, which is to cage people for it,
No,
to
how
arrest
many-
people
oh,
and
wait
cage
a minute.
people for it.
You take a look at the
Well,
Rand
and let's-
Corporation. No one's in prison for possessing marijuana.
No one's in prison for possessing
For
marijuana.
simple possession of
That is
marijuana?
Absolutely
Absolutely
false.
untrue.
We've got documented cases
Good.
on our website.
I want to see the people that went to prison for that because
We'll
they were,
show them
I want
to
to know
you.
what they were really arrested
Well, and
for
let's talk
originally.
about, and let's
It's a
talk
plea
about
bargain.
arrest rates. I mean, arrest rates in this just came out from CJCJ, California's
Yeah.
Study in Juvenile and Criminal Justice. I'm sure we're all aware of the stats because they're very relevant here. Since 1990, over the past several 25, 27 years, between 1990 and 2008, marijuana arrests have gone up in the state 127%. Versus
Yeah.
a 40% drop in all arrest rates for all other crimes.
Well, I'm going to interrupt here and say, you know, the beauty of this discussion is that it can be done and that all sides can sit down and talk about it. You're going to disagree, but that's okay. We thank you for being here today, and we want to continue this discussion, so stay tuned, all right? And we ask you to follow up with us as we follow up these issues explored, and we'll keep in touch with you about the people involved. Now, we also invite you to be a part of this process by logging on to our website. That's equaltimetv.wordpress.com. And look for us again here as we give another issue, Equal Time. Take care, folks.